The mountain kept its own counsel. Snow lay heavy on the north face, packed hard by wind that never seemed to rest. Pines leaned away from the ridgeline as if they had learned, over decades, which direction the weather came from. In the early morning light, smoke rose from scattered cabins below, thin and frantic, each plume a sign of someone already awake, already feeding a fire. One cabin did not smoke much at all. It sat higher than the others, tucked into a fold of the slope where stone pushed through soil like the spine of some buried animal. From a distance, it looked unfinished, too low, too quiet. Just a dark opening facing south and a roof that blended almost completely with the earth around it. That cabin belonged to Eliza Calder. She had come to the mountain 5 winters earlier, alone except for a mule and a dog, after the river valley towns had filled up and the good land was already claimed. She was not young when she arrived, nor old. Her hair had already begun to silver, and her hands bore the marks of work learned early and practiced often. People in the valley called her stubborn. Some called her strange. Most simply called her the mountain woman. Eliza did not correct them. She woke before dawn, as she always did, when the cold was still at its sharpest. The fire behind her stone hearth had burned down to a dull red bed of coals. The air inside the cabin was cool but steady, not biting, not brittle. She swung her feet down, boots already warm from resting near the hearth overnight, and stood. The dog lifted its head, tail thumping once against the floor. It was a shepherd mix, thick-coated, alert, calm. It had learned her rhythms as well as she had learned the mountains. "Easy," she murmured, and the dog settled again. Eliza laid 2 small splits onto the coals and waited. She did not rush. The fire caught slowly, heat spreading outward into the stone that lined the back wall. She placed her palm there, feeling yesterday's warmth still lingering beneath the surface. That, she thought, was the whole point. Outside, the wind pressed against the hillside. It searched for seams that did not exist. Down in the valley, the Calder place had already become a subject of conversation. "They say she's building wrong," someone muttered in the trading post that week. "She's half buried herself like a groundhog," another said, shaking his head. "Won't last a full winter. She's got no man to help her," a third added, as if that alone settled the matter. Eliza heard none of it. She was busy shaping her life according to rules older than the valley's opinions. The idea had not come to her suddenly. It had grown over time, layered like the stone she stacked each day. Eliza had spent her early years moving with her father from camp to camp, cooking in mining towns, mending clothes, listening. Men talked when they thought no one important was listening. They talked about frozen floors, about fires that ate wood faster than trees could be cut, about cabins that lost heat as quickly as they gained it. Later, she worked near a quarry where the rock walls stayed cool in summer and held warmth in winter. She noticed how deep cellars never froze, how stored apples lasted longer underground, how frost barely touched the earth past a certain depth. When she finally chose her own land, she chose it carefully. A south-facing slope, stone beneath the soil, a natural grade that shed water instead of trapping it. She spent her first summer not building walls, but digging. People rode past and laughed, seeing only a woman disappearing into the hillside with a shovel and a stubborn set to her shoulders. "Building a grave?" someone called once. Eliza did not look up. She measured by hand and by eye. The back wall went deepest, packed firm and faced with stone hauled one piece at a time. The side walls followed, angled just enough to resist pressure. She lined them thick, not pretty. Pretty did not keep out cold. The roof beams came next, lodgepole pine cut straight and notched with care. Over them, planks. Over the planks, tarred cloth. Over that, earth, 8 inches at first, then more. She pressed sod down until grass roots knit it together. When autumn came, the cabin seemed to disappear into the mountain. Only the door and the chimney betrayed it. Neighbors watched the first snowfall with interest. "She'll flood," one said. "She'll suffocate," said another. "She'll freeze when the damp gets in." said a third. Eliza moved in anyway. The first weeks were quiet tests. She watched how the sun tracked across the doorway. She adjusted the vent near the floor to draw fresh air without a draft. She learned how long the stone held warmth once heated. She learned when to feed the fire and when to let it rest. By the time real winter arrived, she was ready. The storm came hard and early that year, the kind of cold that did not creep in politely but slammed into the valley all at once. Wind howled down from the peaks, lifting snow into white curtains that erased fences and swallowed roads. In the valley, fires roared day and night. In Eliza's cabin, the hearth burned small and steady. On the second day of the storm, her nearest neighbor, Thomas Rook, stood on his porch staring up the slope. His own cabin rattled in the wind. Frost had crept along the inside of his windows despite the fire chewing through split pine like kindling. "You seen Calder's place?" his wife asked, pulling a shawl tighter around her shoulders. Thomas squinted. "Ain't seen smoke all morning. That can't be good." He hesitated longer than he would later admit. Pride weighed as heavy as the cold. But by afternoon, with the temperature still dropping, he hitched his coat and started uphill. The climb was harder than it looked. Snow drifted deep where the wind scoured the valley bare. When he reached the cabin, he almost passed it by. The roof blended so well with the slope that it looked like part of the hill itself. He knocked. The door opened, and warmth spilled out. Not a blast, not a shock, just a calm, solid warmth that wrapped around him like a held breath finally released. Eliza stood there, sleeves rolled, hair pulled back, eyes steady. The dog sat beside her, tail wagging once. "You all right?" Thomas asked, feeling foolish as soon as he said it. "I am," she replied. "Come in. Close the door behind you." Inside, the air smelled of bread and wood smoke. The stone walls radiated a gentle heat. The floor beneath his boots was cool, not cold. The fire was modest, no larger than one he might use on a mild evening in spring. "How?" he asked, before he could stop himself. Eliza set a kettle back onto the hearth. "Sit first." He did. He stayed longer than he planned. By nightfall, Thomas was talking. By morning, others were listening. Not everyone came with humility. Some came to measure. Some came to look for flaws. Some came hoping, quietly, that the mountain woman would finally fail so the world could make sense again. Eliza welcomed them all the same way. She explained when asked. She showed what she could. She never bragged. Winter deepened. Woodpiles in the valley shrank. Eliza's barely changed. And slowly, without announcement, something shifted. People stopped laughing. They started asking questions. The mountain held through January. Snow stacked itself higher along the ridgeline, layer upon layer, pressed hard by weeks of wind. The trails that once connected the scattered cabins vanished beneath drifts. The creek slowed to a black ribbon under ice. Each morning brought the same pale light, the same silence broken only by the groan of trees shedding snow from their branches. Eliza Calder measured the days by small things: the weight of ash in the hearth pan, the way the stone behind the fire felt at dawn, the sound of the wind as it slid over the roof instead of striking it. Her cabin did not change much from day to day. That was the point. Down in the valley, change was everywhere. Thomas Rook was the first to speak openly. He did it at the feed store, stamping snow from his boots and rubbing his hands together for warmth that never quite reached his fingers. "She's burning less than a cord every 3 weeks," he said, voice low but steady. "And she ain't waking at night to feed the fire." A few men looked up. Most pretended not to hear. "That's so." Someone muttered. "I've been inside," Thomas said. "Stone walls, earth roof, fire runs small, holds heat like a cellar." That drew more attention. Cellars were something everyone understood. Still, understanding did not mean agreement. "It'll mold," said Ezra Pike, who prided himself on having built his cabin square and tall, with windows that caught the morning light. "Give it time. It'll cave," said another. Earth always wins. Eliza heard these things secondhand. She did not answer them directly. Instead, she worked. The storm that followed was not as sudden as the first, but it was colder. The kind of cold that settled in and refused to leave. The wind died down, which made it worse. Without the wind, the cold did not move. It pressed straight down into the valley, seeping into floorboards and joints, turning breath into clouds even near the hearth. That was when more people came up the slope. They came one at a time. At first, always with some excuse, borrowing a tool, checking on her mule, making sure she was managing. Eliza let them talk. Inside, her cabin held at a steady warmth. Not summer, not indulgent, just enough. Enough to work, enough to rest, enough to live without fighting every hour of the day. The dog followed visitors with calm eyes, never growling, never leaving Eliza's side for long. Children, when they came, were allowed to sit near the hearth. They were warm. They were unharmed. They laughed quietly, as if the cabin itself asked for restraint. One afternoon, Ezra Pike arrived. He did not smile. "I want to see the roof," he said. Eliza nodded. She led him outside, around the back, where the slope rose gently over the cabin. Snow lay thick, but even. No sagging, no meltwater cutting channels. 8 inches of soil, she said, packed, sod on top. Ezra knelt, brushing snow aside with his glove. He pressed his palm to the earth. It was firm, cold, but not brittle. "And the water?" "Runs around," Eliza said. "Not through," he grunted. He did not apologize. By February, wood became a quiet problem. No one said it out loud, but piles were lower than they should have been. Men went farther from their cabins to cut. Axes rang at odd hours. There was less talk at the store, more urgency. That was when Eliza faced her first real test. A knock came after dusk. Not Thomas this time. It was Samuel Reed, his wife, and their young daughter wrapped tight in layers, eyes red from the cold. "Our fire won't hold," Samuel said, not meeting her gaze. "We're out of dry wood." Eliza looked past him, at the child. She was shivering but alert, unhurt, exhausted. "Come in," Eliza said. They stayed the night. Eliza fed the fire twice, as usual, once at dawn, once at dusk. The stone did the rest. The child slept through the night without coughing. In the morning, Samuel stood near the door, hat in his hands. "I don't need charity," he said. "I didn't offer it," Eliza replied. "You needed warmth." Word spread faster after that, not as rumor, as fact. People began to walk the slope with purpose, measuring with their eyes, counting steps. Some brought notebooks, others brought only questions. "How deep did you dig? What stone did you use? How do you keep the air fresh?" Eliza answered when asked. She showed them the vent near the floor, how it pulled cold air low so it warmed as it rose. She showed them the chimney path that ran along the stone wall before exiting, giving its heat away before leaving. She did not draw plans. She did not promise results. "You build wrong," she said more than once, "and it won't forgive you." Not everyone liked that answer. "You're holding back," Ezra Pike said one afternoon. "You know more than you're saying." Eliza met his eyes. "I know what I built." Spring came late that year. When it did, the snow did not melt all at once. It eased back, slow and deliberate. The valley emerged thinner, tired. That was when digging began. Thomas Rook was first. Not a full cabin, just a back wall cut into the slope behind his existing one. He hauled stone and stacked it thick, tying his hearth into it the way Eliza had shown him. Others followed. Some tried to copy exactly. Some cut corners. Those cabins told on themselves quickly. One collapsed partway through construction. No one was hurt. The mountain gave warning. Eliza did not gloat. Instead, she spent her days walking between sites when asked, pointing out drainage mistakes, correcting angles, reminding people that weight had to be respected. She worked alone when she returned home. She tended her fire. She fed her mule. She sat some evenings with the dog at her feet, listening to the mountains settle. By the next winter, the valley looked different, not transformed, not yet, but changed. Stone walls dotted the slopes. Sod roofs appeared behind existing cabins. Firewood piles lasted longer. And still, some people waited. "They're gambling," Ezra Pike said. "Next winter will tell." Next winter came. It came harder. Temperatures dropped lower than anyone remembered. Snow came early and stayed, the kind of winter that once would have broken people. This time, it did not. Cabins that had learned from Eliza held. Fires burned smaller. Nights were quieter. Children slept. Ezra Pike's cabin, tall and proud, with its wide windows, struggled. On the coldest night of January, he climbed the slope himself. He stood at Eliza's door for a long moment before knocking. She opened it. "I was wrong," he said. Eliza stepped aside. The mountain listened. The third winter did not announce itself with drama. There was no single storm to mark its arrival. No sudden collapse of temperature that sent people scrambling for extra wood. Instead, the cold settled in the way age does, quietly, persistently, without apology. Days shortened. Shadows stretched farther across the valley. The mountain drew inward. By then, the slope above the creek no longer looked untouched. What had once been a scatter of exposed cabins now showed signs of learning. Earth-backed walls blended into hillsides. Sod roofs lay heavy and green beneath snow. Stone chimneys hugged walls instead of rising free and wasteful into the air. Eliza Calder walked among these changes like someone passing through a field she had once planted alone. People greeted her differently now, not with laughter, not with suspicion, with pauses, with nods that carried weight. They did not call her strange anymore. They called her when they needed to decide how deep to dig, how much stone to haul, how to angle a wall so the mountain would accept it instead of fight it. Eliza did not move fast through this new role. She resisted being placed above others. When someone asked for permission to build the way she had, she shook her head. "It's not mine," she said. "The ground doesn't belong to me." But she knew something had shifted. She felt it in the questions people asked now, more careful, less defensive. They no longer wanted proof that it worked. They wanted to know how to make it last. That was harder, because copying a structure was simple. Understanding its patience was not. Some rushed. Some cut stone too thin, eager to save time. Some dug where water ran unseen beneath the soil. Eliza warned them when she could, but she refused to oversee every build. The mountain, she believed, had to be met honestly. One morning, she was called to Ezra Pike's place. His redesign had held through the previous winter, but something was wrong now. Moisture clung to one corner of the buried wall, darkening the stone. Ezra stood there, jaw tight, pride finally set aside. "I missed something," he admitted. Eliza knelt, pressing her fingers to the stone. She followed the damp trail with her eyes until it disappeared beneath the floor. "You dug into a seam," she said. "Water runs here in spring." He cursed under his breath. She stood. "You can fix it. Drainage trench. Deeper this time. Give the water a way out." He nodded. He listened. That winter, no one froze. That was the thing people remembered. Not comfort, not ease. Survival without desperation. Fires were fed twice a day instead of through the night. Children rose in the morning without stiff fingers. Dogs slept where they pleased, stretched near hearths instead of huddled tight. The mountain cabins did not feel warm in the way a summer room feels warm. They felt held, as if the cold had been asked to stay outside, and had agreed. Visitors began to come from farther away. A trapper from the North Ridge, a surveyor passing through, a woman traveling with her brother, bound for land beyond the range. They noticed the roofs first, how they disappeared beneath snow instead of shedding it. They noticed the quiet next. "Where's all the smoke?" one asked. Eliza did not give speeches. She showed them stone. She showed them earth. She let them feel the wall behind the hearth with their own hands. Some understood immediately. Some did not. That was not her concern. What troubled her came later. It began with talk of permanence. "If we build like this," Thomas Rook said one evening, standing near her door, "this valley could last." Eliza said nothing. "People won't have to leave every time a winter goes bad." Still nothing. "We could grow old here." That made her turn. "Careful," she said. "Nothing built into a mountain lasts forever." Thomas frowned. "But it could last longer." "Yes," she agreed, "if people remember why it works." That was the risk she saw now. Not collapse. Forgetting. By the 4th year, children who had once whispered about the strange buried house were playing on sod roofs as if they had always been there. They did not know how unusual it had been. They only knew it was normal now. Eliza watched them from her doorway, dog at her side, and felt a strange mix of pride and unease. The knowledge had taken root. Roots grow where they will. That spring, she was asked to speak at the meeting hall, not to explain how to build, to explain why. She stood at the front, hands folded, the room quiet in a way she had never heard it before. "I didn't build to be clever," she said. "I built because I was tired of fighting." She spoke of heat as something to keep, not chase, of the ground as a partner, not an obstacle, of listening longer than talking. She did not tell them what to do next. She told them what she had learned to respect. When she finished, no one clapped. They simply sat there, absorbing it. Later that night, Eliza returned to her cabin. The fire was already low, the stone still warm. The dog curled at her feet. She thought about the first winter, about the laughter, about the silence now. Legacy, she realized, was not about being remembered. It was about being repeated without being misunderstood. The mountain shifted slightly in the night, a sound so subtle only those who lived with it noticed. Eliza slept. The mountain did not celebrate its victories. It did not mark the years that passed or the changes it absorbed. It simply remained, accepting what was placed upon it and pushing back only when ignored. Eliza Calder understood that better than most by the time the 5th winter came. By then, the valley no longer spoke of trying the buried way of building. They spoke of refining it. Cabins were no longer tall and exposed by habit. New homes were planned low from the start, pressed into slopes with care, their backs turned respectfully to the north wind. Stone was chosen not for looks, but for weight and memory. Roofs were measured not by pitch alone, but by how much earth they could bear without complaint. Fires changed too. They were smaller, calmer, no longer fed in panic. And because of that, people changed. They slept longer. They worked with steadier hands. They argued less in winter, when tempers once ran as thin as wood piles. Children learned seasons without learning fear. Eliza watched all of this from the edges. She was invited often now, asked to bless new builds, asked to settle disputes over drainage lines and wall thickness. She did what she could, when she could. She refused more than she accepted. "I'm not a measure," she told them. "I'm a reminder." Some understood, some did not. The first real test of what the valley had become came quietly, the way important things often do. It was a winter without mercy. Snow began in early autumn and never truly stopped. Trails disappeared before the first deep freeze. Supply wagons turned back. The outside world, thin as it already was, pulled farther away. In years past, that would have meant suffering. This time, it meant adaptation. People shared labor instead of wood. They sealed vents together, checked drainage trenches, cleared snow where it pressed too heavily on roofs. They watched one another's chimneys, not to count smoke, but to notice when it changed. One evening, Ezra Pike came to Eliza's door with no tools in his hands. "I didn't lose a night of sleep this winter," he said, voice low, almost disbelieving. Eliza nodded. "I did things right," he went on. Because you showed me where I was wrong, she corrected him gently. Because you listened. By late winter, it became clear that no one was leaving the valley that year, not because they couldn't, because they didn't need to. That realization settled slowly, like snow filling a hollow. People stood longer at their doors in the evenings. They spoke of spring not as escape, but as continuation, and Eliza began, quietly, to step back. She stopped visiting every build site. She stopped answering the same questions twice. When someone asked her to draw plans, she refused. "You don't need my hands anymore," she said. "You need your own judgment." That unsettled some. Others found strength in it. Thomas Rook noticed first. "You're pulling away," he said one morning, watching her stack stone near her shed. "I'm staying where I am," Eliza replied. The distinction mattered. She spent more time alone that year, walking the upper ridge, repairing her own drainage, where the mountain had shifted slightly after a heavy thaw, sitting on her sod roof in the rare warmth of early summer, dog beside her, watching the valley breathe. She had never built for recognition, but she had built with intention, and intention, once released, moves on its own. The final moment came without ceremony. A young couple arrived one afternoon, strangers by their clothes and the way they studied the land. They asked careful questions. They listened more than they spoke. They did not ask Eliza to design anything. They asked her one thing: how do we know when we've gone deep enough? Eliza thought for a long time before answering. "When the ground stops feeling like something you're cutting into," she said, "and starts feeling like something you're leaning against." They thanked her and left. She did not see them again. Years passed. The mountain woman grew older, not frail, just quieter. Her hair silvered fully. Her steps slowed. The dog aged beside her, still loyal, still unharmed, still warm by the hearth each night. The valley no longer spoke her name often. They didn't need to. What she had done had folded itself into the place, into the way cabins were planned, into how winters were faced, into the assumption that survival did not require suffering. On the morning she finally left her cabin for the last time, there was no gathering. She closed the door carefully. She touched the stone once, feeling the warmth held from the night before. The mountain was steady. It would remember. Snow fell lightly as she walked down the slope, the valley quiet and secure behind her. Above, the sod roofs rested easy under white. Below, smoke rose slow and thin, and the mountain, satisfied, kept its counsel. If you enjoyed this story, click the video on your screen now to watch another unforgettable tale where destiny and courage collide in ways you never expected. Don't forget to subscribe and consider to hype our video to help us keep bringing you more stories like these. Your support means everything to us.